Starmer demands help for hostages in unsellable flats. Now, we care very much about this here at LBC. So Kier Starmer will throw his weight behind a Times campaign on unsafe housing. He's going to use a parliamentary debate to demand help for those who face huge bills for unsaleable properties. He's going to force a vote calling on the government to end the plight of 700,000 people trapped in dangerous homes and 3 million who cannot sell flats because of decades of shoddy construction, exposed by the 2017 Grenfell fire. One of the points about this is that the cladding was legal at the time and was recommended and following guidelines, some of this cladding that was up there. The problems often are lying, it seems to me, in the interpretation of the law and these EWS forms, and it is blooming complicated and people are completely stuck in the middle. Paul Afshar is a campaigner with End Our Cladding Scandal. It's an organisation representing people still living with potentially flammable cladding. Paul, hello there.
Hi, Andrew. Good morning.
It's really good to speak with you. You've thrown yourself into something here, very, very important indeed. If you could just put the argument into your own words to explain to the audience what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. So let me use myself as a case study, Andrew. I bought my flat, which I'm in currently, several years ago. It was actually before the Grenfell Tower, and as you say, as the rules around cladding were perhaps a little ambiguous. Since then, I've tried to sell my flat twice. Been twice unable to do so because no mortgage company will grant any buyer a mortgage because of the presence of dangerous and flammable cladding. So you might say I'm trapped in a fire-clad flat, which is obviously a horrendous prospect for me still living here, mainly because I can't move, I can't get out, and obviously not a palatable prospect for someone who's buying as well. And the challenge we have is that it costs tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds for the cladding to be removed from the entire building, because it's not just individual flats you're talking about an entire building of 30 or 40 units. And under the current English law, under current leasehold law, 100% of that cost is passed on to the leaseholder, so the person like me who owns my flat. Now, in my situation, I didn't have any help from my parents when I bought my flat. I bought on the government shared ownership scheme, which means I own a proportion and the Housing Association owns a proportion there as well. I own 25% of my flat, but I'm going to have to pay 100% of the costs for cladding. And you're talking about £10,000-20,000 potentially per leaseholder. Now, the government's preferred solution is for leaseholders to take 30-year loans to cover the cost of removing that cladding. And I just have two really simple things to say to that. Number one, we can't accept this cladding tax on leaseholders, people who've saved hard and long to afford their first home like me. It's just deeply unfair that I should have to take a loan for longer than my mortgage term to pay to make my flat safe. And number two, why should we have to pay for it anyway? It's not my fault, it's not our fault as leaseholders that this problem exists, that people are also having to pay thousands upon thousands each month for waking watch patrols to make sure that their flat isn't on fire.
No. And how high up are you? Because the rules are supposed to change, and a lot of it is to do with the interpretation of rules around these EWS forms making your place unsellable, aren't they? Just if you could explain that briefly to people. I've not done a good job with that.
Absolutely. So the regulations stipulate that buildings above 18 metres should have this particular type of survey. Now, my building is not 18 metres. I'm actually on the ground floor as well. It's 4 stories, so 18 metres is roughly about 10 stories. And the reason for 18 metres is it's as high as a fire engine's ladder can go. So, it's obvious why the government has chosen that. There are two problems there. One is that most mortgage companies are demanding an EWS1 survey, which is a particular specialist survey to see if the cladding is flammable and needs to be removed. So they're demanding that survey on all types of flats, including mine. Now I'm on the ground floor in a building much less than 18 metres.
Yeah. Paul, do you know what? I have to leave it there. I hope we've shone a little bit of a light onto this problem, and we're not going to take our eye off it. I know you're not as well, and I do understand your angst and many of your arguments as well. I'm completely at one with you on this. I'm sure many people will be. Much appreciate your time. Paul Afshar, campaigner with End Our Cladding Scandal. It's an organisation representing people still living with potentially flammable cladding.